Well, Rachel, thank you so much for joining us on the block and also for doing this interview with me. It's a real honor to be able to interview you after all of these years of you documenting our work and much of our journey, and us, more of you being in the interviewer seat. So, just, you know, wanted to give our listeners a bit of background about you, Rachel Lears, who is an absolute badass filmmaker. She's a highly awarded documentary director, producer, cinematographer. Her first feature film, The Hand That Feeds, tells the story of undocumented immigrant workers organizing at a New York deli and was nominated for an Emmy in 2017. Then in 2019, her film Knock Down the House premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and is now on Netflix and follows the story of four candidates who also happen to be Justice Democrats, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and how she decided to run and her upset victory. And now we're here to celebrate the release of your latest film, To the End.
You're one step away from success. That's when they want you to think you're the furthest. But you are close. You are close.
Which was also featured at Sundance and the Tribeca Film Festival last year, and is going to be coming out on Hulu on May 8th, which is very exciting. She's also a very, very dear friend of mine and who I would consider a movement leader who I deeply admire and respect after, it's like 6 years of working together, both behind the scenes and, as you'll see, into the end in front of the camera on some of the films that she's done. So I thought actually that might be kind of a good place to start for just a bit, Rachel, before we start to dig into what To the End is all about. If you could, share a bit about what you remember about us sort of first meeting and what first drew you to kind of documenting social movements, obviously like Justice Democrats at the time, but it seems like that's sort of a through line in some of your work.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Alex, for being part of To the End, of course, where you gave so much of your time and so much of your soul to the film and to everything that the film is about, as we followed the movement for a Green New Deal through 4 very tumultuous, volatile years from 2018 all the way through to 2022 last year. And also, I mean, you were a huge part behind the scenes of Knock Down the House as well. I think we might have first talked in 2016. That was when I first started
That's right.
talking
Yep.
to the organizers. You asked like how I got into sort of making movement films, and that really started in around 2011, 2012, when I got involved in Occupy Wall Street, right when it started in New York City, where I live. I was part of their media group, and I became part of the immigrant worker justice group there too. And that was how I met the really amazing workers who were organizing at the deli with the help of Occupy Wall Street activists. They occupied their store in 2012. And that was really what got me started on the path of making films around social justice and movement work. And each one has been a huge education, both in the issue areas that each particular film addressed, whether it's labor or progressive candidates or climate justice, but also just, I think, the through lines of movement work and how it transforms people and what it takes to make politically impossible things possible, and what it's like on a personal level to kind of realize that you can create power collectively, and just the challenges of sort of believing in that and having the courage to take those steps to join a movement and stand up against these powerful adversaries and take on these huge and entrenched issues. So that's kind of a lot of what the through line is for me. When I first reached out to Justice Democrats, I was kind of between projects. I had finished The Hand That Feeds a couple of years previously. I'd done some shorts. I had a baby in 2016, who is now 7 years old. It's crazy.
Oh my God.
My
crazy.
kid was 8 months old when I started making Knock Down the House, and now 7. So it's been a minute. But when the 2016 election happened and Trump was elected, it was pretty clear okay, I have this background in making political documentaries. This is not the time to stop. So I began thinking about what could I do and what sorts of projects would I want to be involved in. And I had read about, at that time, Brand New Congress. At that time, Justice Democrats was just an idea and hadn't sort of become public as a organization yet. And it was the same organizers behind both. I think I had phone calls with each of you, like 9 of you, to tell you about my previous work, right. And try to convince you that I was trustworthy and that it would be worth your while to let me document some of this really courageous and unusual project that you were embarking on. And then I ended up coming to the first gathering in 2017.
So I'm so glad all of you are here. This whole thing is making me feel like there's no way that we're going to be able to stop this snowball that's now getting rolling. It's going to become an avalanche in a couple months. We want to actually create that grassroots funded machine that can be a real opposition to the current institutional powers, and that can really give power back to the people and really keep that power, right?
I felt like there was such a wide divide in this nation in terms of how we understand each other, how we speak to one another. And in December, I get a call from ISRA saying, you've been nominated to Brand New Congress. And I was like, what? I'm from New York, and New York isn't Democrat versus Republican. New York is establishment versus whatever poor stray cat thinks you can stand up against them. And then if you do stand up against them, they take you and they consume you. I never really saw myself going into politics. But now that I sit here in this room with you all, I just feel like we can only accomplish great things together. I feel like I have to because of you guys now.
Together, 6 potential candidates. They hadn't even necessarily decided whether they were going to run yet. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was there, Cori Bush was there, and that, I think, solidified the idea for all of us. I mean, certainly for me, it was really compelling to see these extraordinary, ordinary people making that commitment and kind of convincing each other to take that plunge and run for federal office. But then, through my conversations with you all, it seemed like that was really a defining moment as well for some of the organizers about believing that this was going to happen. And it's felt really all along through the next several years that there have been these weird parallels between the grassroots campaigns that you're running and our process of independent filmmaking. I mean, not the same thing at all, but there is a lot in common, I think, in the sense that you're up against a lot. There's long odds. It's really hard. You have to convince people to give you money. You have to convince people that you're the right people to do this. With the hindsight now of all these years, you have to really roll with the ups and downs of sometimes the world is behind you and sometimes it's not. It's really an uphill battle. Sometimes the wind is at your back and sometimes it's really not, right? Yeah. Right now, talking about To the End and talking to you, I just want to say how grateful I am to you for everything you shared with the film. I know you don't love to be in front of the camera, which I completely understand. I also try to be behind it, but you made it work, and you allowed that to happen, and we had a dialogue about what would work and what didn't work, of course. But I can't thank you enough for placing that trust in me and my team, because I think what you were able to give to the story on a personal level, of course, the incredible work you're doing with Justice Democrats and being a media spokesperson was really, really important to the story, but also on a personal level, just showing that you're a real person and that, some of these things you do are hard and it's an emotional experience. That is what makes it a film rather than an article, right? Or a Wikipedia entry about what happened. Being able to show that real people are going through this emotional journey is what makes it worth doing as a film and worth watching. And then at the end of the day, the film can be a tool for getting people involved in the movement, or for keeping people's spirits up, for staying involved. And that is 100% because you and the other folks involved were willing to take that leap and put that trust in us. And I can't thank you enough. And it's just, you don't know how many times I like quote you in my personal life. Like Robin Blotnick, my partner, is the editor of the film, and we go through these interviews and clips and scenes so many times, and there are all these inspiring things that you and the others say, and we'll just quote them to each other. We'll be like, no matter what, this was the right thing to do. We're either going to go out in a blaze of glory, or we're going to win what we want.
Oh my God, that's so cute. Oh, well, thank you, Rachel. That means a lot. And for folks listening, like, that's why I trust Rachel in terms of how you think about this work and all of the intersections. And I was thinking a lot about the parallels that you were naming before this interview, because obviously very, very different, this sort of social movement, grassroots work that we do, electoral work and advocacy work that we do from independent documentary filmmaking, but those barriers of power, right, are very real and kind of span across all of these different industries, and it takes a lot of work and support, and that's what it was really nice to have a filmmaker and obviously some of the other subjects to really lean on throughout that emotional roller coaster. To be able to kind of get through those moments. And that's what makes, why I decided to do it, and why I think, hearing you and what brought you to social media is very similar. It's people, and it's all of these stories. It's how we, despite going through so much, can overcome. And just hearing you talk about it, like you said, you were in the emotional roller coaster alongside us. That first moment of all of us kind of deciding to start this journey of building a brand new Congress, a slate of Justice Democrats, and having that feel spiritual almost, because of us feeling like it's not just one person doing something in a vacuum. It's like a group of people stepping up to try and take on these power structures despite what comes. So I was curious if you could talk a little bit about, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but the process for you as a filmmaker and making these films kind of alongside folks like me and Varshni and Rihanna and Alexandria, what it was like for you, what the transition was like too, from making Knock Down the House to going to the end, because it doesn't seem like there was very much
There was no break.
Right?
Yeah.
There was no breaks for you at all. And you mentioned your son is already 7 years old at the start of this. I'd love to just hear how you're doing personally, and also how this process is like for you as a filmmaker, kind of being in the trenches with folks.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely varies, and it's up and down. I remember for Knock Down the House, we were working on it for over a year. Everything that we did was getting rejected by all the grants that funded The Hand That Feeds, and we just couldn't we weren't sure if we were even going to be able to make the film. In early 2018, I remember having a conversation with Alexandria that January, where she wasn't sure she was going to be able to do the campaign. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do the film. We were all just like, maybe none of this is going to happen. And so for the film, we decided to do a Kickstarter at that point because we needed some money. It was like putting yourself out there, putting it out there to the universe, pounding the pavement, and doing all the stuff that you have to do to have a crowdfunding campaign. I remember thinking, okay, well, we're going to raise enough money to just film the primary season, and then at the end of the primary season, we'll find out whether this project is viable. And if it is, great. If it's not, it's not. And then, of course,
Can you put it into words?
Nope. I cannot put this into words.
All right, your supporters here are very excited for you.
Midway through the primary season, Ocasio-Cortez wins her primary, and everything changed. At that point, we had a lot of interest from the film industry, and it became a question of, protecting our editorial independence, which always continues to mean a lot to us, and which is really under threat in the film industry, just with the models that we have to work with in a lot of ways. I mean, Knock Down the House came out at this moment of just peak celebrity and public interest in Ocasio-Cortez, which was amazing to ride that wave. But what was happening with To the End at that time was that we were actually starting to make the film as we were finishing Knock Down the House. So there was no break, there was overlap, and for a while it wasn't totally clear where one was going to end and the other was going to begin. So we were doing a bit of filming with her in DC, having these conversations with her and her team about, could we possibly do some, follow you in Congress? What would that be like? And I really wanted to focus on climate, partly because I knew she was going to be focusing on climate, but also because that fall in 2018 was when that IPCC report came out that said, we have to make all of these huge, rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society and the economy, right? By 2030, to turn this ship around and avert the worst effects of the climate crisis. So that was really a wake-up call for a lot of people. We knew it was a problem, but it was kind of, the scientists were definitely kicking it up a notch in the alarm that they were sounding at that time. So that really galvanized me to, whatever I do next, it's going to be about climate. And of course, that same fall, Justice Democrats collaborated with Sunrise Movement and then Representative-elect Ocasio-Cortez on the sit-in at Nancy Pelosi's office. I will never live down that I wasn't actually there. I believe Corbin called me at like 10 the night before, and I was living in upstate New York, and it was one of those moments where it's like, I'm not going to drive all night. I can't. But it worked out. The film still happened. I really wish I'd been there. But but it was such an incredible moment. There was so much promise at that time. I think with the new progressives, the squad had just been elected. People were so excited. Trump was still in office, but there was this, rising tide of progressive energy. And the Green New Deal fit right into that. And it was such a positive vision for how we could actually do what the scientists are saying. People are concerned about climate. People are freaking out about it because of this IPCC report. But here comes the Green New Deal, and it's like an actual solution. And it's got so much, the youth movements were taking off. And it just, everything kind of just fit together in that moment. And the Green New Deal really exploded. And of course, there's a backlash pretty quickly from the right, and everything gets a lot more complicated. But in that moment, for me, it was just a no-brainer. Like, I've got to make a film about the Green New Deal. It quickly expanded from just working with Alexandria to also including you and Varshini Prakash from Sunrise Movement and Rihanna Gunn-Wright. The initial idea for To the End was like, okay, we're going to follow these key players behind the Green New Deal and just see how far it gets. And in a lot of ways, it was a less concrete idea for a film than Knock Down the House was, because elections are a lot more clear-cut than policy. It's just more complex than that. Like, you can win, it can feel like winning and losing at the same time. When especially at this large scale, you're trying to like literally change the historic trajectory of one of the most massive national economies in the world through a creaky legislative process that is so broken on so many levels. So at the end of the day, I think what we documented and what you all accomplished is way bigger than anything I documented before in any of my other films. The way it plays out is really an emotional roller coaster too, more than anything because of the pandemic. That created challenges for all of us, for people who are organizing, for everyone in their everyday lives across the world, of course. But in terms of film, we couldn't, from my standpoint, it felt like, okay, these folks are not slowing down, but it's all happening over Zoom now. And not only can we not be there, but even if we were, is that really a movie? No. So, so we had to think of creative ways to make it feel like we were with you all through the pandemic in the film. And you know, we don't go play by play through the pandemic, but some really important stuff happened in 2020. Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman were elected. The task forces happened, the Biden-Sanders task forces that Varshini and Alexandria sat on, that really changed the direction of the Biden campaign's climate agenda. You know, we had to cover those without being able to cover those the way we're used to doing it, being in the room. So we sent each of you some audio equipment, and we did Zoom interviews, and then we never used the visuals of those Zooms. And then we just tried to get together with you in whatever ways we could safely outdoors. The plus side was really there's a lot more outdoors, I think.
That goes well with the climate.
Exactly. There's a lot more landscapes and you know, being outside than there probably would have been if not for the pandemic. What ended up happening with the release of the film also, I think, paralleled the experience of working in the climate movement, which is that, you know, we all thought something was going to pass by the end of 2022. It looked like Build Back Better, rest in peace, was going to, some version of it was going to pass. And we submitted to Sundance with that in mind. And we told them, like, hey, the film isn't done, but, you know, everybody says something's going to pass by the end of the year, so you should really program this. And we were incredibly fortunate that they did program it. And then while we were in post-production, you know, almost done with everything, Joe Manchin did his stunt on Fox News and killed Build Back Better. So we had to premiere the film with this really unfinished ending that was really depressing. And it was just, we didn't have time to really think through, like, okay, if this is what's happening, how do we shape the narrative around this? Because we'd been planning, editing the whole thing for an ending of something passing.
Yeah.
So without going into all the details, the film went through 3 public versions last year. We edited a whole other version for Tribeca Film Festival in June. And then when the IRA passed in August, it was obvious that we had to take a step back and edit the final version with that as the culmination of all of this work. Because of course, you know, with all its flaws, it's still a massive piece of legislation, a massive shift in US climate policy that would not have happened without the movement, the primary challenges, the inside and outside strategy that you all worked on that we documented for those years. And so now the thing I'm the most proud of about the film is that it shows it's everything we set out to show. I mean, this is how you make change on a massive historic level, and what it's like on an individual level being part of that. And, you know, it's not perfect, it's messy, but it's real.